Welcome back to Revealing the Truth. I'm your host, Rabbi Eric Walker. We're talking about the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. And today's program is dedicated to lifestyle and lifestyle choices. We talked earlier about cussing control with Jim O'Connor. Interesting conversation and discussion about how foul language has creeped into our everyday communications, and how, as a Bible-believing, faith-based minister, I don't use it. I don't think that there's any situation where cursing is appropriate. But yet, for those that use it as a part of the vocabulary and want to change, he's written a book on how to change it. Our next guest, who will be with us this segment, has a fascinating story. Our program is dedicated to bringing you not just what's going on in Washington and around the world, and terrorism in Israel. Those are the headlines. We're committed to also bringing you the heartlines, those stories which are compelling, those stories which are life-changing, that talk about someone's transformation from a life in the world to a life with the Lord. And the power of the Holy Spirit, the power of God in their life. And so our next guest writes in her dedication of her book, entitled Desperate for a Fix, these words: I would also like to dedicate this book to all the people who have made really bad decisions, who struggle to forgive themselves and live every day feeling like that part of our life is a big black hole of darkness. Find peace and run with it. The way I have done it is to use it to help others with the help of God. It works. Keep in mind that your life will unfold and you have a say in how that happens. Desperate for a Fix by Dana Brown is the true story of a Southern girl who had been injured by preteen image bashing, rape, and abortions. Her need to be loved and her rebellious nature convinced her to move to New York City in order to find what she didn't realize she had all along. Eventually, the truth rang out, but not before 9 years were spent homeless, addicted to heroin, prostituting herself, and many other harrowing experiences. With the help of her family, two New York City detectives, and the many prayers from home, she was able to find a real God in a way she never dreamed possible. Dana Brown, welcome to Revealing the Truth. So glad to be with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Dana, you've written this book, Desperate for a Fix, and you have on here, if you only knew how one good decision could change your life.
Yeah.
It's quite a statement, because for all of us, that one good decision is to say yes to Jesus. Is that the decision you're referring to?
That is the decision that I'm referring to.
Well, certainly the title, Desperate for a Fix, with a syringe laying on the floor, the picture on the cover, which you can find on our Books and Media page, Desperate for a Fix by Dana Brown, shows the picture of a drug addict. But when I turn the book over and I look at the back of the book, and I see a picture of a loving mother, a loving wife, of children that hear no evil, speak no evil, and see no evil. And the picture from 1997 of you and who you are today, I was stirred so much by your story that I had to have you come on the program to share with our audience your story, Desperate for a Fix. Can you kind of set this up for me? Can you tell me where all this began and what it felt like to you in the very beginning, and kind of walk me through what happened in those early years?
Sure. I, like a lot of teenagers and preteens, was awkward, to say the least, which a lot of preteens consider themselves that way. I was bullied and picked on and teased and really didn't fit in with the popular crowd. And so in trying to find a place to fit in, I found other people who weren't fitting in and that were numbing these hurts and these wounds from being rejected by people. And they were doing so with pills and drinking, and so that's kind of where it got started. And then around the age 14, I had been, dabbling here and there, just some pills and drinking. But I met a man who was 21 years old. He was the first man who ever showed me any interest at all. And at 14 years old, I didn't realize he was a pedophile. I saw him time and again. And the last time that I saw him, he raped me. Leading up until that day, I felt value. He was giving me something that I was missing. He was giving me attention. He was treating me as if I was a pretty girl, something that I had just not experienced. So we call that grooming. He groomed me. The day that he raped me, I told him no, but having grown up in a household where I knew that when you had sex with someone, then that meant they loved you. Sex and love were they were together. They were one. Well, I left there very confused because I had told him no. And if he loved me, he would have listened to me tell him no. Back then in the 80s, you didn't really talk a whole lot about rape. There were, I'm sure, a lot of it going on, but it was just kind of pushed under the covers, so I didn't even mention it to my mother or my father, knowing I wasn't supposed to be at a 21-year-old man's home. And so that kind of started a little more drastic downhill spiral. And after that, a lot of confusion. It's amazing how confused I actually was. Every boyfriend that I would encounter or that I was interested in having a relationship, I thought that was the way to a relationship, to a loving relationship, was to give myself to them. So I did that quite often. It never worked out the way I had anticipated. So still being very confused, I did get a boyfriend. We dated for several years, and I wound up pregnant at age 19. I was 19 years old, and I was very excited because I thought that the love that we had between each other had created this baby that was going to be an unconditional love for me. And he didn't feel the same way. And the first thing he told me to do was go and have an abortion. Back in the 80s, the truth was that babies were not babies yet. They're blobs of cells. That's what I was told when I went to the doctor. I was not given any other options. It was, what day can you come in? It was $250. And is anyone making you do this? How old are you? And what's your name? And that was the basic. So I went through with that. And wanting desperately to believe that it was just a blob of cells. That deep down I knew the truth. And so that led to more drugs and alcohol, smoking pot, experimenting with cocaine. I even started selling marijuana at one point. I wound up pregnant again about a year later and got the same response. Same boyfriend, got the same response. And at this point, I think my self-esteem was so low that I gave up what I loved inside of me but wasn't tangible to have what I thought I had in front of me that was tangible. He wasn't worth it. And so that just led me, we broke up, and it led me down just a spiral of guy after guy after guy. Very promiscuous lifestyle. The police started watching me in my home in Wilmington, North Carolina, because I was still selling marijuana. And I had met some people in New York City, and a friend of mine was going to college there. And so I decided I'd move up there. And I moved to New York City. I moved in with my boyfriend, another non-committal relationship. Lived with him for several months and found a decent job. Was a functioning alcoholic. Did cocaine occasionally. When we broke up, I really just kind of dove into the party scene. I found that partying made me a fun person. I'm an introvert, naturally. Now I kind of like it. Back then I didn't really like it. But I was an introvert, and partying and cocaine and alcohol made me fun. And I was, people liked me, and I was the life of the party. And nobody was saying, ew, why is she here? It was a whole different fitting in, and it was fun, which is what makes drugs so deceitful. It was fun. So I had a decent job at a graphic design firm, and I worked there for several years, partying just about every night, drinking, using cocaine, and smoking weed, smoking pot, pills sometimes. Well, I went to a party one night, and heroin was there. And I tried it, and honestly, I hated it. And I feel like now it was a warning that I didn't heed. I hated it that night. It made me violently ill. I cried for hours trying to go to sleep after finally being able to breathe again. And I swore I would never do it again. And my friend, and this friend is now clean and doing well as well, but my friend told me, you just did too much. Here, try this little. I mean, it's a match head. And I tried that, and I had never felt so at peace. Another deception of the drug. I don't know how a baby actually feels in its mother's womb, but if I had to guess, I would guess that it felt like what heroin made me feel like. I was warm. I was protected. Nothing could hurt me. I was not sad. I was happy. I was fed. It felt like a baby in its mother's womb, just completely cared for. Like I said, that is the deceitfulness of the drugs, because it was not long after that it became my job. It became my life. There was nothing that I did that didn't surround heroin. So I was gone as a person, and now all I was a heroin addict. There was no other aspect to my life. I lost my job. My boss tried to help me. He tried to help me get clean, And that's when I realized that I was really in bad shape. He sent me home to North Carolina, and when I came back, I immediately got high. And that's when I knew that this chain, these binds were on me. So he asked me to leave, and I don't blame him. And so I was fired from that job, which made me lose my place to live. And I had to do something. I didn't have a place to live. I was addicted to heroin. I didn't want to go through withdrawals again. So I started looking through the paper. I was staying on a friend's couch, and I found an ad for a gentleman's club. Don't know why I assumed it was like for a door person at a strip club. As I mentioned before, I have been so promiscuous. And so this jump wasn't huge to me. It was just a jump. And so I went, and it turned out to be a brothel. And it was for a prostitute, for a call girl in the brothel in uptown Manhattan. So I pondered what to do for, honestly, not very long. She told me what I would be doing. I thought to myself, well, I've been sleeping with men all these years and never getting the love that I felt I deserved. I may as well get paid for it. So if you looking back over all of that time, I can see each little step that opened the door further and further and further until now I'm a prostitute in a brothel. I went from a girl who didn't quite fit in middle school to a prostitute addicted to heroin. And this is what I like to tell people. No one wakes up one day and says, you know what? I think I'm going to go become a heroin addicted prostitute. Or I think I'm going to go out and become homeless and just be a criminal and shoot heroin all day. There's stories that come behind it. Some of the stories include mental illness. Some of the stories include sexual abuse as a young child or teenager. Some of the stories include bullying. But there's a story, and it leads up to there. So I find myself a prostitute in a brothel in New York City, bouncing from couch to couch because most of my money was spent on heroin and cocaine. At this point, I am intravenously using both heroin and cocaine. Probably had about a $300 heroin habit and a $200 cocaine habit a day. And eventually you start to look pretty rough when you're using drugs like that, as you can see in the 1997 picture.
Correct.
So, it's pretty bad when the brothel doesn't want you anymore. So I was asked to leave. At that point, my only option was to become a street prostitute. And that's what I did. God is so good. Just the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you today is amazing to me. I got in and out of men's cars all day long. All night long. I didn't sleep for days. I overdosed in stairwells of buildings where I was getting high. And I'm still sitting here.
By the grace of God.
By the grace of God. My family had learned what was going on. And they started contacting New York City Police Department in the precinct where I did most of my business. And they would call a few times, and they would actually get phone calls when bodies were found. Is this your daughter? And so my dad finally found a couple of police officers, Bill Burns and Bill Foley, detectives at the precinct in the Lower East Side where I did all my running. And my dad said, I'm sorry, I don't want my daughter buried in Potter's Field. Potter's Field is where you bury people who have no name.
Right.
Who have no connections, no family. My dad says she has a name and a family. One of the police officers has a brother who had been suffering with cocaine addiction. And so this officer really got a heart for my dad. And he made it his mission to find me. And I didn't really like it at the time. I saw him more as my nemesis. I wanted him to leave me alone. I didn't want my parents to see me the way I was. I wanted to just continue numbing and not caring. And he wasn't going to do that. He wasn't going to leave me alone. My parents would come up to New York and they would walk around the Lower East Side with a photograph of me. And I would get wind of it. People would tell me, you know, other prostitutes, the drug dealers, whoever, they'd be like, your parents are here looking for you. And so I would go and I would hide. And finally I got arrested. And I was put in Rikers Island. And Bill Burns, who is my angel at the time, I thought he was my nemesis, but God uses people. He just uses people. And Bill's my angel. He came to court that day and talked to the prosecutor and talked to the judge and convinced them to allow me to go into a program and release me into his custody. And there's not, I don't know many people who would do that for someone they don't know. He didn't know my dad. I mean, we're from North Carolina. And so they released me into his custody. He took me to Queens, to a detox center there in Queens. And I was homeless. And so I looked homeless. I had dirty clothes. My person was dirty. My hair was dirty. I was dirty. Everything was dirty. My shoes were, barely shoes anymore. And he left me at the front desk to get checked into the detox. And he left and came back about 30 minutes later with brand new sweatpants and some shirts and a pair of bright white Reeboks. Don't know why, but that's what he brought to me. And he also brought some candy, because candy helps with withdrawals. However, the detox, they won't let you take that stuff in. But he, barely knowing us, went out and took care of some basic needs that I had. I'm trying to watch the time and I see that are we in need of a break or keep going?
Well, I'm going to give you a break.
Okay.
We're here on Revealing the Truth talking with Dana Brown. She's laid the foundation for how she got as far away from God as she possibly could. This was the pit. This was the bottom. This was years of addiction. This was years of selling her body in exchange for money, in exchange for drugs. She was at the bottom, yet her parents never gave up the fight for her. They enlisted a police detective who was willing to fight for her even when Dana was not willing to fight for herself.
Yes.
To say that this is a story to be envied would seem quite inappropriate. But yet, as we look at Dana today, we know that she is an overcomer by the word of her testimony and the blood of the Lamb. And so we're going to take a break here now on Revealing the Truth. If you have a question or a comment for Dana, give us a call at 205-558-5100 or toll free 888-988-9673. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what happened. What happened that brought you to this question, or this statement, if you only knew how one good decision could change your life? While we're taking our break, go to ianbn.com, go to Books and Media, and click on Desperate for a Fix by Dana Brown and order this and read her story. It'll change your life. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Kramer, Associate Producer of Revealing the Truth on the Igniting a Nation Broadcasting Network, and we have very exciting news to you regarding our new website, ianbn.com. Not only will you be able to live stream our programs, but you'll be able to go back and check out old programs as well. Just check out the TV Archives tab on our homepage. Missed any of Rabbi's rants? You can check out and catch up on all of those there as well. So many of you have been asking about our past teachings, such as the Torah teachings, the Jewish roots and history classes, as well as the prophecy and the news clips. Well, you can go back and research all of those there on the website as well. So check out ianbn.com for more. In addition, we will have a newsletter regarding any of our special guests that we have here in the studio, as well as more materials. Check it out and you won't regret it. If you'd like to join our conversation further here at the Igniting a Nation Broadcasting Network, check us out and use hashtag Igniting a Nation, as well as Revealing the Truth on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
This is the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of Revealing the Truth, right here on the Igniting a Nation Broadcasting Network, inviting you to join me every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for our prophecy and the news classes. Each week I take the headlines from around the world that have a biblical connection and present them in a way that brings the news and the Bible to life. There are over 2,500 prophecies in the Bible, and there are so few classes available to see how they connect with world events. We cover everything from Islamic terrorism to the changing relationships between Russia, Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Israel. Prophecy is unfolding before our very eyes, and to many, it is complicated and hard to understand. In just 1 hour each week, you'll be given the tools and the biblical connection to world events. With so much going on and so few reliable sources of news, I encourage you to join me every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. at St. Mark United Methodist Church in Northport, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at Beechwood Baptist Church in Mount Olive, and every Thursday night at 7 p.m. at Mountain Chapel United Methodist Church in Vestavia. If you want to make sense out of what's happened in the world around you, this is the class for you. All are welcome. Times and location addresses can be found on our website at ianbn.com. I hope to see you there. Shalom.
Igniting a Nation Ministries is devoted to spreading the message of the gospel to as many people as possible. And like many ministries, we need funding to keep going. Your contributions are greatly appreciated, and we want to be able to send you some of the resources that we've been creating here at Igniting a Nation. We will be presenting you with special offers throughout the month, and I'm excited to share our first special offer with you. During the month of January, Rabbi Eric will be sending you 2 of his many titles with a contribution of $50 or more. This is a fully tax-deductible contribution to Igniting a Nation. You will receive a signed copy of Rabbi Eric's latest biblical thriller, The Codist, which discusses maybe some of the options Satan is taking in our modern age to disrupt our relationship with God. In addition, you will receive a signed copy of Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. This Bible study has remained in the top 100 best-selling messianic titles for 5 straight years. Everyone from small groups at churches all across the world to inmates in women's prisons have been using this Bible study, and through it, lives are being changed. Your gift of $50 or more should be made payable to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. Make sure to mark in the memo section offer number 2017-1. Visit our website, ianbn.com, to see the entire list of books available through our partnership with Amazon.
Welcome back into Revealing the Truth right here on the Igniting the Nation Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Rabbi Eric Walker, and joining me long distance is Dana Brown, the author of Desperate for a Fix, If You Only Knew How One Good Decision Could Change Your Life. You know, while we're on break, I get an opportunity to talk with our guest off camera, and Dana just shared with me that occasionally she will pick up the book and read it for content, and she reaches a point in the book where she actually is so caught up in the story that she says to herself, I really hope she makes it. How interesting that as we look at this story today, she's looking at it from the outside in, as opposed to living it from the inside out. And this is the transformational power of God, that we can look at the story of our lives. And I myself can tell you that my 65th birthday was last week, and the odds were that I wouldn't make it. The odds were that the things I had done in my teen years and my later years, I shouldn't be here. Most of us shouldn't be here. So there's only one reason, and that's because God has a plan for your life, if you will accept it. So returning now is Dana Brown, and as Paul Harvey used to say, tell me the rest of the story.
Well, I think we left off where Detective Bill Burns had bought me some new clothes. He had dropped me off at a detox, and he bought me some new clothes and some nice new Reeboks. Back in the 90s, that was the deal, the white high top Reeboks. Well, he left me there at the detox, and I was supposed to be there for 7 days or so. After 3 days, the voices in my head convinced me to leave. Now, remember that I had been mandated by the court to go there. I had been released into Bill's custody to go to a detox. So
right.
If I'm not in the detox, then I have a warrant for my arrest. So I left the detox. They gave me a token for the train. I got on the train and went directly down to the Lower East Side, and I got my dealer to front me a bag of heroin, which means, loan it to me, give it, and I'll pay you later. And I was walking around trying to find my other dealers, and then I found them. They were on the street corner, one of the street corners in downtown Lower East Side Manhattan. So there's me and about 3 dealers standing there on the street corner, and it's probably 8 o'clock at night or something. And out of the blue, a white Caprice Classic kind of squalls tires up next to us, and that's definitely an undercover police car. And out pops Bill Burns. All of the drug dealers scatter like roaches. They were not going to get arrested, but he didn't care about them. He was there to get me. And I said, how did you know I was here? He said, your white Reeboks shone so bright from 3 blocks away that I knew it was you. And he came and he got me and he took me to jail, which might just seem horrible. Most parents don't want their kids to go to jail, but I can promise you this, if they're doing heroin on the streets of New York or any other place, jail is a much better place for them to be. So he took me to jail. And I had been in and out of detoxes, in and out of jail several different times. There was one time that the judge released me to my parents to go home to North Carolina to go to a detox in a rehab. we got down there and I did the 30 days in the rehab. I was clean, but I had a court date 2 months later back in New York City to report back to the judge. So by this time I was clean for 3 months. And I was doing fairly well in North Carolina. But the closer we drove to New York, the more I felt the pull of the drugs. And I would tell my parents, we stayed in New Jersey. I said, please keep your eyes on me because I feel like I'm going to run. And I don't know how many times I said that, but I know that I told them and they remember me telling them. But once we got to court and the judge had given me time served, so I was clear. I didn't have any more warrants. If I took off, I was free. I told my mother I needed to go to the restroom and I left the courthouse. Mm. And my father, who has had 5 hip replacement surgeries and has arthritis and just not well even back then, saw me run down the stairs of the courthouse and jump into a taxi cab. And when I looked out the back window at my father chasing this cab. And while it tore me up inside and I cried and I couldn't pull myself together, I didn't tell him to stop driving. And he drove me to my dealer's house and then I was lost again to the streets. I think that's probably one of my bigger regrets and hurts is watching my dad. He's forgiven me a long time ago, but watching him run behind the cab and not acting, not getting out. So it's kind of like a circus. It starts all over again. Here I am back. I'm back on drugs and I'm back in the city. I was clean for 3 months. I had a life ahead of me. As soon as I get back to New York, I take off and run away. And Bill Burns was still my angel. He made arrangements. I got arrested several other times. I got a felony for a drug sale. My record is pretty substantial record. And he got me into another program that was for a year. And I learned some skills and I learned some tools and I did very well for the year, but I broke a rule. I still hadn't worked on my self-esteem and I found a boyfriend in treatment who had the same problems I had. Not a good idea. I don't know why, I should have listened to them because they were the professionals, but I didn't and became a heroin addict again. Came out of this program back into heroin, wound up getting pregnant again, and had my last and final abortion.
So this cycle began at about 17. How old are you at this point?
At this point, I'm 27.
27. So 10-year cycle, in and out, heroin addiction, prostitution, pregnancies, third abortion.
Yeah.
But yet your mother and father and this detective didn't give up on you.
No, they didn't give up. And my sister, who had accepted Christ at some point during those 10 years, she would tell everybody that she came across to pray for her sister. And there were women's prayer ministries all over, our hometown where my name was being spoken. Just this morning, we're doing a 21-day fast at our church, and there's names of people on the pulpit, and I called as many as I could, because I know the power of prayer.
And how do you know that? What happened? What happened in your life that was what you would call, and you say, if you only knew how one good decision could change your life, what took you to that point of decision? And what happened? And then how did your life unfold from that point forward?
Okay. I was in jail, and I would call my sister a lot, Colette. She wouldn't talk to me unless I let her pray for me. And she would pray for me. Well, I got out of jail, and I had detoxed from heroin. I had almost finished detoxing from methadone, and even though you've detoxed off of it, you're still very sick, and you're physically very ill, and mentally very ill. And it was right before Christmas, and I didn't want to use heroin. I didn't want to be homeless, and I didn't want to prostitute myself, and I had come out of prison into homelessness. And so I checked into a rehab and called my mom, and she asked if I wanted to come home for Christmas. And I said, yeah, because it was freezing in New York. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't want to be a junkie prostitute anymore. So she sent me a round trip ticket, and I came home, and about, I guess, maybe I'd been home for about 12 hours or so. My mom said, why don't you just stay here? Why don't you just not go back? And I said, can I keep my return portion just in case? She said, okay, yeah. And so I said, okay, I'll stay. And then she kind of threw a wrench in it, and my mom said, we'll let you stay if you go to church 3 times a week. So she knows I want to be there, and she knows what I need. And in order for me to stay there, this was a consequence. Not a consequence, a requirement. I needed to go to church. And I didn't have to go to their church. I could go to my sister's church. And so around 17, my brain stopped developing, so I'm still acting like a toddler. Right. And I told my mom, I'm not going to your church. I'll go to Selena's church, my sister. Well, the first night, I went to a Sunday night service with my sister, and she sits me down on the front row. You know, so here I am sitting on the front row. I'm still detoxing from methadone. I can't sit still. I'm fidgety. I'm annoyed. I don't want to be there. So just about every 5 minutes, I would get up and walk outside, smoke a cigarette, come back, get out, go. I'm sure I was driving everyone in the place crazy because I was on the front row and continuously getting up and down. Well, I don't recall what the pastor preached because I didn't stay in there long enough to hear anything. But he did ask this question, and like I mentioned earlier, I thought myself to be such a logical person. Well, he asked a logical question, and he said, is there anybody in here who, if you left and died tonight, that you would want to know for sure that you'd go to heaven? And so I'm like, well, yeah, I'd like to know that. I believed that there was heaven and hell. I didn't really know what it was all about. And I was like, well, yeah, who wouldn't want to know that? And everybody's eyes are closed. And he says, if you would like to know that, raise your hand. And so I did. And then he gave the call to stand up and come forward and pray. And my sister didn't know what was going on. I had just been aggravating her the whole time. And I just kind of elbowed her, and I was like, will you come with me? And she did. And we went to a back room, and a beautiful woman, Diane Mitchell Bridgman, she prayed with me. She was a woman who had called my name in the prayer meetings. And I didn't really feel much different. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. I didn't know what to expect. So I went home. I was living at my mom's, told my mom that I accepted Christ, and I went to bed. Mm-hmm. To bed, and no big deal. Well, when you're withdrawing from methadone, you don't sleep very well. You stay up and you sleep for a few minutes, you get up, your body twitches, you're in pain. It's not good. Well, I lay down and I went to sleep Like, I slept the whole night. It was a deep sleep that I hadn't experienced in years. And when I woke up, I made the bed. Now, I never made the bed because I never had to have a bed for the longest time. It wasn't something that meant anything to me. But when I made the bed, it was almost that I could see a change in my person. I would have never gotten up and just made the bed. But I got up and I made the bed. And I didn't really realize until I came out of the bedroom that my withdrawals were gone completely. I was not sick anymore. My muscles didn't ache anymore. I realized I had slept the whole night. I didn't have stomach issues that you have when you're withdrawing. It was all gone. And not long after I realized that I didn't have a desire to get high anymore. It was miraculous deliverance. I had no idea that even could happen. And it did. It happened. Literally overnight. I went to bed one person and I woke up a new person. And my parents noticed it. My sister noticed it. I noticed it. My dad noticed it. I didn't feel like grabbing my return portion of my ticket and running back to New York. It was gone. I hadn't felt like that in years, like normal, just free, at peace. I hadn't been able to feel those emotions in years. Well, not long after that, I had to find a job. I was going to stay in North Carolina, and I have this felony, and I have all these misdemeanors, and I have, all of this record that's, I had no anticipation of getting a job. But we found a job listed in the newspaper, and it was for a church. And I didn't have a car, so my sister took me, and I sat across from the pastor. And we started the interview as any normal interview would start. But before I knew it, it became a counseling session, and I was in tears and just spilling my guts, telling him everything, my entire life story. And we wrapped up the interview with a little more skill set, and I left, and I thought to myself, that man is never going to hire me. And my sister just kind of rolled her eyes, and we went home. And 2 weeks later, I was working for the church as his administrative assistant. And I worked there for 7 years.
So, Dana, you're telling me, and all of our audience, that for 10 years you were immersed in the deepest, darkest pit that any human being could ever possibly imagine.
Yes.
That you had abandoned your family, you had abandoned all semblance of decency.
Yes.
You had sold yourself for a bag of heroin today, another bag tomorrow. You were relentlessly pursued by the love of family and friends and a New York City detective.
Yep.
All who represented ambassadors from God.
Definitely.
And the first time that you sat in a church and were asked the question, do you want to know for sure if you're going to go to heaven? You answered it.
Yeah.
And supernaturally, your life was transformed.
Completely transformed.
You went to bed as the old Dana,
Yes.
and you woke up as the new Dana.
Yes.
all through the power of God and the power of salvation, through the shed blood of Jesus, taking your sin upon his back.
Yes.
And delivering you, and that was the word you used, delivered you. Complete and total deliverance from drug addiction, from pain, from suffering, that everything that was described in Isaiah 53, everything that he took upon his back for you had been fulfilled. It would be hard for me to hear this story and imagine it being true if I wasn't a believer as well. And I've seen with my own eyes the power, the transforming power of a personal relationship with the only begotten Son of God.
It's amazing.
And so here you are in the last 4.5 minutes or so, 4 minutes of our program. Tell me what's going on in your life today. You're married?
Yes, I am. I'm married to a wonderful man who is very supportive. He had 2 children from a previous marriage, and we adopted 3 more children through foster care, and they are on the back of the book.
Yes.
I am speaking in churches and having people partner with me by donating my book, and I go to detoxes and I go to rehabs and I tell people my story, and I stand in front of them as proof of God's power.
So there was nothing that you could do, and you did just about everything, but nothing you could do could separate you from the love of God.
Right.
Nothing could take you out of his plan for your life, to take you to complete and total despair, to the very end of yourself, so that he could begin to do a new work in you.
Yes. I like to tell people that you can't get far enough away from him. What will happen is, as far as you think you are away from him, you're going to turn around and he's going to be standing right there.
You know, I tell people that if you stand back to back with somebody, all right, and you're looking out, you can't possibly see them. But all you have to do is change your point of view, change your perspective, and you'll see that they were right next to you all along. And this is exactly what was happening with you and God. He spared your life from overdose. He spared your life for all of the sin that you had committed, but because he had already made the sacrifice for your sin, he was just waiting for you to make the decision that you've had enough. And you wanted to say, I want none of me and all of him.
Yes.
And so Dana tells this story. I would encourage all of you to go to our website, to go to the Books and Media page. The book is called Desperate for a Fix: If You Only Knew How One Good Decision Could Change Your Life, by Dana M. Brown. And on the back cover is a picture of Dana in 1997 that says, "The old has passed away." And the picture next to her, next to the old, is the new Dana Brown, who lives a very fulfilling life still in North Carolina.
We're in Virginia now.
In Virginia now. All right. Happily married, raising children, and telling your story because you are an overcomer by the word of your testimony. And this is your testimony. No one can take this away from you.
That's right.
Right? This is your story to tell about the grace, the endless compassion and mercy, the transformational power of a loving Father that would chase you from North Carolina to New York City and back again, just because you mattered that much to him.
Yeah, and how could I not tell people that they can have the same things that I have? When I look back in my history and it was a big, dark pit, how could I not tell people and make that pit a light for other people. How can I not tell people how good God is?
Amen. Amen. Dana Brown, thank you for being with us here on Revealing the Truth on the Igniting Nation Broadcast Network. I want to encourage people, support what Dana's doing. She's getting out there. She's telling her story. She is helping transform lives. That this isn't a gift for her to keep. It's a gift for her to pass on to others. So help support her. Visit our website, ianbn.com. Go to Books and Media, click on Desperate for a Fix, and order this great book. Dana, it's wonderful to have you. It's a pleasure to meet you. God bless you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord turn his face, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his countenance toward you and give you his peace. Until we meet again, thank you for being on Revealing the Truth. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll be returning to hear the story of Bob Fife, Bob's experience of one Christian's experience of leaving the gay community. We'll be right back.